Hello? Okay, we got 2 of you in here, 4 of you. So slowly, people will hopefully start coming in. Give us just a second and we'll get going here. Okay, up to a grand total of 5. There's a live chat in the bottom. If we go through this PowerPoint and you guys have questions, it should be in the right. Yep, there's Emily's figured that out. That's not surprising. So as you guys have questions, we can work on that. I'm learning this new software, so forgive me from time to time. Also, fourth block, you may had some trouble seeing some stuff with the new unit. It is supposedly there. Canvas had some issues. Hopefully it's there. I'm checking right now and it's not, so that's not great. Let me try the import one more time from the comments. Anybody else have questions? You can come in here. We'll start in about 2 minutes. So, if you know anybody else showing up, 2 minutes. You can also text questions in to Remind 101 and would be more than happy to answer questions from there. We're down to 6, so I lost somebody. Yeah, so Emily asked if you get extra credit points for doing the packet. Yeah, I'm not sure where I am on that. I was hoping we would be in school on a delay today, but we will. I will consider that, and if we're there tomorrow, I will have word back to you. If we are not there tomorrow, I don't know what to tell you. We're in worlds of trouble if we're not there tomorrow. I can't believe I lost someone. Okay, so you're gonna bounce between my face here and an AP Gov PowerPoint. Hopefully you guys have been studying on this a little bit. This PowerPoint is available in third block's Canvas right now. I have no idea what's happening. That fourth block Canvas is not cooperating, but we'll go through that. Any general questions, let me know. Okay, 6 of you watching. Okay, so if you have questions, text them in to Remind 101. Send them in. Otherwise, I'm going to go through this PowerPoint. I will jump in and out of the PowerPoint to kind of check to being what's said in the live chat. So if I don't immediately jump onto your questions, that's why. Oh, good. I have a new subscriber. Okay, so let's start with the basics here. Let me pull up this little PowerPoint here. So first of all, this unit is I mean, just huge. A lot of information. If you remember, we started this right before Thanksgiving, and we see a lot of how the government functions in this unit. Important to kind of keep that in mind is that this is simply how does the government work? What do the different branches do? Um, how can we articulate that? And then the big thing is, and what you guys kind of struggle with sometimes is how does that work out in terms of how does that apply to various situations. So hopefully we'll be able to address some of those, go over some different things. Um, I did a much shorter PowerPoint. My original PowerPoint for this whole entire unit was like 120 slides with pictures. I tried to scale that down to a top 10, if you will. There's a bunch of you coming in, especially from third block. Fourth block, I'm still trying to get that up for you all. I have no idea what's going on. Our common sharing is acting weird. Let me try one more time. Yeah, it's not wanting to cooperate. All right, so let's just do this. Fourth block right now, everything that is available. The third block isn't up there, but I'm going to put just the PowerPoint I'm about to go over in there, and then we'll get started so you can kind of follow along and ask questions as needed. Okay, any other questions? Just keep in mind I can see the chat at all times. Okay, so I'm gonna jump in, and I won't be able to see my screen for a second, but I'm gonna jump into a different viewer here. Okay, well, hopefully you can hear me now. Let me change that. Okay. Now, I'm going to go jump back in the presentation and just let me know really quickly if you can hear me now. Okay, so now that I'm in the presentation, let me know if you can hear me once you see the Congress basics slide. Okay, if that's working for everybody, we're in good shape. Let me know if the sound is working at that point. Okay, good. Okay, great. Glad to hear the sound's working. All right, let me jump back into this. Okay, so I'm going to go over this slide one more time just really quickly. Legislative branch makes laws, power of the purse, declare war. And then executive branch is the president, enforces the laws, commander-in-chief, all that good stuff. Judicial branch, Supreme Court, interprets the laws, declares laws unconstitutional. And then the bureaucracy implements the laws and carries out laws to the citizens. So let's start with Congress. And Congress is the basics. Okay, this is a really simple overview of Congress, these next two slides, making sure that you all understand this. So lawmaking process, very simple. Here is a bill is introduced, and then it goes to a committee. Now that committee, we have different committees for different things that generally covers every imaginable subject for lawmaking. What the bill applies to goes to that committee. The committee then hears various pieces of evidence and edits the bill. Committee then votes to pass the bill to the full House or Senate. Most bills, though, die in committee. They don't make it past step 3, and they can really die at step 1, 2, or 3. They can die anywhere. But, 95%, 90% of all bills die before or at step 3. And then if a bill makes it out of committee, there's two different procedures. In the House, the bill goes to the Rules Committee and it attaches a date and times for debate on the bill and a date and time for all 435 members to vote, not just the members of those committees to vote. In the Senate, the bill, though, has unlimited debate and a vote has to be called for. So when it passes out of committee, it goes to the floor and anybody can come and discuss it for an unlimited amount of time. If you remember back, and we'll talk about this here in a little bit, that creates the opportunity for a filibuster in the Senate. However, a filibuster can't exist in the House because of the Rules Committee attaching rules to the bill. That's why they're called the Rules Committee. Okay? If a bill gets a majority of members in one chamber, it repeats the process in the opposite chamber. So if it passes the House, it has to go to a Senate committee, okay? And then all the way through these 5 steps. And then if it goes on, it goes to the president to sign or veto. And then the power of the purse. Congress gets to decide how to spend tax money that is collected. It doesn't do the collecting. We have a branch called the IRS, and the bureaucracy does the collecting. But once all the tax money is collected, Congress gets to decide what specifically we will spend that on as a country. This also means, though, that Congress has the ability to decide to raise or lower taxes. When we get into policy, our last unit, we'll discuss that a little further. Okay, so let me pop out, make sure we don't have any questions, make sure everything's still working appropriately. Okay, everybody, let me know if we're good. Are we good? Okay. All right, so let me continue on here then. Differences between the House and the Senate, and there are quite a few. Even though they share the same responsibility of making laws, there's difference. Most notably, the size. House Representatives has 435 members, where the Senate has 100. There's requirements. You have to be 25 years old or older to be a member of the House of Representatives, whereas you just have to be 30 years old to be in a senator. Okay? And you have to live in the state, and here you have to live in the district. Now, districts are all in the same state, so that's very similar in the requirement. House of Representatives, you have to be a citizen for 7, and then here you have to be a citizen for 9. We'll talk about that in just one second. All tax bills must start in the House, okay? They go to the Senate still, but they have to start in the House, okay? The Senate, though, has a lot more kind of power, if you will, because they get to approve all presidential nominees. That's justices, that's cabinet members. They get to approve treaties with foreign nations. That's really the big one. The House of Representatives gets the power to impeach, but let's remember, power to impeach does not mean remove someone from office. Impeach means charged. So you charge someone with a crime. The Senate holds the trials for impeached officials, and they decide about removal from office. Okay? The 435 members are elected every 2 years, so 2-year terms. So we just had an election in November of 2016. In November of this year, we will have another election. All 435 members must be elected again. On the flip side, the Senate, only 33 to 34 senators go up at a time every 2 years, thus creating 6-year terms for a senator. The Speaker of the House is the person in charge of the House, and they are elected by the majority party. So you have two parties in the House of Representatives, the Republicans and the Democrats. Okay? The Speaker of the House is selected by whoever there is more of. So if there's more Republicans, the Speaker of the House will be a Republican. If there's more Democrats, the Speaker of the House will be a Democrat. That person is not only the most powerful person among the 435 members, they are also third in line to be president. So it's president, vice president, Speaker of the House. Okay? Whereas though the vice president is the president of the Senate and breaks tie votes. Okay? Filibuster is possible, and this is what we talked about, because there is no rules on debate for a bill in the House, or in the Senate, I'm sorry, because there's no rules on debate in the Senate, you can talk for an unlimited amount of time and thus block someone from voting. There's a way around that. I don't want to get into that right this second, but if you need to know more, it's called Coultre. It's one of your terms, Coultre. Go look it up, okay? All right, the president. Let me stop really quick, make sure we don't have any questions, and then I'll jump back in there. Okay, no questions, no questions. Feel free to ask anything. If you're confused, ask. Now is the time, my friends. Okay. So let's go with president. Okay, requirements is that the president is 35 years old, and that's a minimum. A natural-born U.S. citizen. So that means, in order to be a natural-born citizen, your parent or parents have to be from the United States. So your mom or your dad have to be from the United States, or both. Or you could be born inside the United States boundaries, including our territories. Okay? You've had to live in the United States for 14 consecutive years prior to being president. The president is also our commander-in-chief, and this makes him the top military officials in the United States. He makes all of our military decisions. He can overrule any military decision. He can really decide what happens there. Okay? He can order troops anywhere, but he can't, and this is of course, a kind of rule that is broken often. He theoretically cannot make them fight without orders from Congress, but that happens quite regularly, all in the name of national security, and that kind of overrides everything. But the way it's supposed to work is he sends the troops somewhere, but they can't fight until Congress approves the fighting. Enforces the laws. The president carries out the laws because he is in charge of that massive organization, the bureaucracy. Okay, the president issues executive orders. Okay. And those orders are to the bureaucracy about things to do or ways to enforce the law that is before us. And then veto power. The president can decide not to enforce the law, and that completely destroys that law. All right. So let me just make sure no questions. No questions, no questions. No questions coming in from Remind. Hearing people having some trouble. Okay, everything makes sense there. No questions. All right, so where do the president, and this is a big theme of this unit, president and Congress conflict quite a bit, and for various reasons. And there's no good way to understand this other than to simply jump into it. You can kind of see the natural conflicts in their constitutional power. Now, here's the thing to understand. There is almost always an FRQ about one of these topics of a conflict between the president and Congress on every AP test. If there's one on almost every single AP test, it is safe to say I'm probably going to ask you one about one of these subject matters, okay? War, budget, appointments, and vetoes are where the president and Congress commonly conflict. There can be other areas, but that is the most common areas of conflict. Okay, so war. President and Congress have differing powers here. Remember, Congress declares war, and the president is in control of the military. Well, they try to resolve this with a law called the War Powers Act, okay? And it's supposed to create rules, such as the president has to notify Congress 48 hours before a military strike. Generally, military strikes are supposed to be secret. Presidents often don't like telling members of Congress because they have a tendency to talk. Again, there's 435 of them. If you tell one, they're going to tell another, and then it gets out. So it kind of takes that advantage of surprise away. And then they have to limit troop involvement to 90 days without congressional approval. Now, the result of this law that was passed by Congress and signed by the president at the time in 1973 is the law's been ignored. The president generally just goes, oh, well, that's nice. Who's going to enforce this law? That's my job, and I think I can get away with it, okay? The other big, and we're seeing a lot of this right now in our current politics, is budget. There's a government shutdown being threatened right now as we speak because we don't have a budget. So every year, the president has to submit a budget to Congress. This usually happens in February for all the spending to be done by the government for that year. However, Congress, though, if you remember, has that power of the purse. So while the president spends generally a long time, most presidents have spent a long time getting these things ready, the Congress can just go, well, that's cute, but we get to decide how this actually spends. So because of this, a budget's only been passed 4 times since this process was created in the 1960s. Now, here's the real problem. If we don't pass a budget, we've got to pass something called a continuing resolution, saying that we're going to keep spending the way we were previously for these amount of days. Our continuing resolution is coming up on its deadline, and we need another continuing resolution. Currently, Congress is refusing to do this because the president is saying he will veto any continuing resolution that does not have the border wall funded in it at about $18 billion. Congress and him are having fights about this. It is very interesting. You turn on CNN right now, and probably within like 15 minutes, they'll be talking about it. Okay, because the president is in control of the bureaucracy, he gets to appoint thousands of jobs in the bureaucracy and judges to courts. The Senate has to approve every one of them, and naturally that's going to create some conflict. The Senate is going to reject some of these appointments. And then naturally vetoes anytime the president destroys a law that a majority of Congress has agreed to. That is going to bother Congress and create a conflict. So Congress can override that veto, but it takes 2/3 of all 535 members of Congress to make that override happen. And that is very difficult to achieve. Okay, let's jump back out, see if you guys have any questions. Yes, this unit does cover your handwritten notes 5 through 8. This is a very shortened version of it again. If you need more details or feel like you don't understand something, I highly recommend consulting notes 5 through 8. Okay, and then let's move on to the bureaucracy, and we're going to talk a little bit about bureaucracy basics and all this good stuff. Okay, so bureaucracy has 4 parts, okay? And if you remember back, the bureaucracy's job is to implement the laws. So the bureaucracy's 4 jobs, if you will, is or 4 roles or 4 sections are cabinet departments, okay? You can see some examples here of the Department of State, the Department of Labor, the Department of the Interior. Each department is headed by a secretary, okay? Except Department of Justice calls theirs the Attorney General. Independent executive agencies are just like departments, but they don't have cabinet status. So NASA, Small Business Administration. So these 2 things are fairly similar. Here's where we get different, is the independent regulatory agencies. Okay, they are independent from the executive. Now, the executive appoints to them when there are openings, but he generally doesn't fire or per se. He could, I guess, but he generally waits for openings. These people have term limits or, naturally have reasons to leave, and then the president can appoint a new person, of course, with the approval of Congress. Then we have government corporations, and these are supposed to act like businesses, okay? They charge Americans for their services, so it's not part of your taxes. These people can charge for like tickets on railways. That's what Amtrak does. For a stamp, for energy, that's who provides all of our energy, and goes to your electric companies and creates the basic for that. Okay, so I'm going to jump out here really quickly. See again if we have any questions. Any questions from anybody? I'm going to switch back to the camera. Anyone, any questions? I'm going to stop for just 1 second. If you have questions out there on Remind 101, shoot them in. I'll take a minute break until I know there are no more questions. It is important. If you have a question, if you don't understand something I was just talking about, tell me. Tell me now. Let me know if you don't have any questions. I'll check the phone, make sure I haven't missed a Remind 101 come in yet. Taking a minute break. Anything? People watching this on replay are really going to enjoy. Anything at all. Jump into Remind, into the chat. Okay, well, we understand everything. This is exciting news for me. Okay, let's go ahead and get back into the notes, seeing that we don't have any questions. All right. And here we go. Okay, so issues with the bureaucracy. The biggest thing here is how the bureaucracy began. First of all, the bureaucracy is very big. And actually, I can kind of live this while we're going. Let me add this, okay? I don't like the way this is laid out in reality. Yeah, whatever. That's not that horribly important. That's not that horribly important. Okay. So one of the big problems today, and I'll talk about spoil system in a minute, is 2.8 million employees. Okay, the president is the top official in all of these. If you kind of go back here, and I'm going to grab this really quickly from our bureaucracy slides. This is the org chart, if you will, of what the bureaucracy looks like. And all of them kind of end with the president. So the president can, in theory, fire just about anybody with inside the federal bureaucracy. Okay. And let me power. Okay, sweet. Let's go from here. So the bureaucracy has 2.8 million employees. Just realized I made auto switch. Yep, I switched screens. I'm good. The bureaucracy has 2.8 million employees today. Most of those don't even work in Washington, D.C. If you include the military, which is about 1.2 million people, you get near 4 million people working for the United States government. That makes it one of the largest employers in the country, if not the absolute largest. I think it and Walmart get into fights. I think when you count the military, it's the government quite easily. Okay? Implementation power, and let me explain kind of what I mean by that. Implementation power means that each individual, like an IRS agent in Oklahoma, can decide what he's supposed to do to implement the tax law and who to audit. Auditing is kind of like getting caught for speeding. You know, if the officer, points the gun at you to see how fast you're going, he's trying to figure out if you're speeding or not, and you created an issue. An IRS agent in Oklahoma has to pick like, oh gosh, whose tax returns look weird? Whose tax returns may be cheating? Let me just pull random ones and I'll figure it out. And that's the implementation power. Okay, so those are the two biggest problems today. It's big, and the implementation power makes it, it's so big, so many people working, so many people getting to make individual decisions about what actually happens. This creates an issue. Okay, so back to the biggest problem with bureaucracy was when it started, we had something called the spoils system. So you could say, I'm going to give you a job in the bureaucracy if you help campaign for me. So I'm going to hire my whole entire campaign worker to be a mail carrier in Detroit, Michigan, if you go out and have 10 friends vote for me. Okay, and that was the way we began things. All right, the assassination of Garfield changes that, and a law called the Pendleton Act comes in. Garfield was killed by a guy seeking an office that didn't get it because Garfield gave it to somebody he liked and a political supporter and a friend more than this guy who was actually more qualified. So it says the spoils system has to go away. What we are introducing is a merit system, so a system based off of a test score. We're not going to look at in theory, they shouldn't be looking at your age, your gender, your race, anything like that. They should just look at the score you get on a test. This test is often called the civil service exam, but other agencies in the bureaucracy can have different exams depending on their thing. And this should be the basis for hiring and promotion. Okay. Then the Hatch Act of 1939, amended in 1993, prohibits government employees from engaging in political activities while on duty. So that means your IRS agent can't run for Congress. Because Congress gets to determine tax levels, the IRS agent can't be actively working and running for Congress or being a campaign manager for somebody for running for Congress. They have to be very, very apolitical. They should not give too much money. So that's what the Hatch Act says. Okay? These are big issues that we've seen throughout the history of the bureaucracy. Okay, and again, here's the org chart of the federal bureaucracy. The executive branch is in charge of it. The president is in charge of that. You see him here in the top line. So here are the departments, and then here are, independent establishments, independent regulatory agencies, independent executive agencies, and government corporations. All of these answer to the president. So the guy delivering your mail is technically answerable to the president of the United States. They flow up this chart, and that is part of the 2.8 million employees that work for the bureaucracy. The legislative branch really only has 535 members. The Supreme Court has 12, and then the justices, maybe we push around 3,000, 4,000 members of the judicial branch with justices and certain types of special attorneys and clerks like that. But the executive branch is 2.8. It overshadows all of these. It is a big, hefty branch. And if you're making an argument, which is the most powerful branch, Well, this one has 2.8 million people looking for it. So that is a great argument that it might be the most powerful of the bunch. Okay, and the last thing we're going to talk about for today are iron triangles. Okay, iron triangles are alliances between Congress, the bureaucracy, and the interest group. And they give and exchange things in order to promote each other. So an interest group is a business or a group of people trying to persuade politicians to do something. So Congress can pass a law, okay? So, friendly legislation and oversight here is what they would give to the interest group. What the interest group is giving is electoral support. That may be money or saying, hey, we'll run campaign ads for you. We'll create a pact, okay? So Congress does that. But when Congress creates these laws, it's got to give the bureaucracy power to do this. So if the bureaucracy wants money, if your little agency needs some money, you better do what Congress says, which is trying to support this interest group, okay? And then in return, the interest group is going to give low regulation, or maybe they're going to look the other way. If you're an EPA officer and this interest group is, Polluters of America, and Congress passes an environmental law, and maybe you go, oh gosh, I would like Polluters of America to keep telling my congressman I'm doing a good job, so I'm going to allow them to dump pollution all into the atmosphere and the lakes and the streams, and that'd be very bad. Okay, it is important to understand this. This will be on the test a minuscule amount. It will come into play much, much bigger later on when we talk about interest groups. But I want to introduce it now while we're talking about the other two of the three parts of the iron triangle. Okay. Again, this PowerPoint should be up online. Fourth block is having issues. I'll get everything moved over there by hand as opposed to doing it the automatic way, which is down later this evening. So I'm going to hang out for a few minutes. If you want to ask questions about anything related to this class, AP Gov, whatever, ask away. I am here for that. Okay, go down. Any questions? Anybody got anything? You can send in via Remind 101. That PowerPoint will be up there. There will be a replay of this in case you need that. Okay. Anything? I don't see anything. Here, I'll ask you guys. Any questions? Any questions at all? Okay, I will hang out for a few minutes. If you want to go, that is the main part of the show. Fourth block, I'll add in those links momentarily. I'm so sorry, I have no idea what went wrong. In the transfer there. Anyone, any questions? Just gonna watch me awkwardly sit here. And send them in via Remind. You don't understand something. So yeah, that's a good question. What will be the majority of our questions? Make sure I have the screen off, and I'll open. Yeah, I have the screen off. I will go ahead and open the test and give you some insight into that. I struggle to say majority of questions come from one area or another. We kind of have three parts here: bureaucracy, Congress, the president. Congress and the president is the very safe bet. I'm looking at your FRQs now. I will tell you, just helpful hint. I think the hardest of the FRQ is the congressional election. So terms like reapportionment, redistricting, and gerrymandering would be very, very important to know. That may very well be an FRQ. Okay. Yeah, so the stuff on the note cards will be on the test. It's tough because I think what you guys are used to is multiple choice questions that say, what is, a veto? And that's not necessarily the AP style questions. AP style questions will be like, what is a reason the president may veto a law? And, talk about enforcement and all this other stuff. So you have to know what a veto is from this aspect of being able to apply it to a situation. And that's what I would encourage you to focus on when you are going over your topics. Okay, great, I know what it means, but can I apply it? Maybe when would the president use a veto? When would Congress override the president veto? When would there be a conflict between the president and Congress about war? So yes, those will help from a standpoint of terminology, but it is up to you to apply those terms correctly. I, I have no idea how much it'll affect your grade. It'll affect it in some way, shape, or form. You do better, you'll be helpful. Okay. Any other questions? Happy to answer them. Do we want me to go over congressional election stuff? I worry that wasn't clear. Anybody out there want to go over congressional election stuff? I can do it fairly quickly. Give me 1 second. Yeah, it'll 100% be on the test. I'm basically telling you it is one FRQ. Or well, it's not like the entirety of the FRQ. It is part of the FRQ. All right, let me drop it in here really quickly. Okay, so I dropped a slide in called House of Representative Elections, just because House of Representative elections have different concerns. Let me go into the PowerPoint really quickly, and it'll be on the PowerPoint from this point forward. All right. Let us go in here. And okay. So the House of Representative elections. So it's important to understand reapportionment happens every 10 years after a census. Pretty important to understand what a census is. It's basically us counting the entire population of the United States every 10 years. And then it is allocated off of the amount of representation based off of a state's population. So currently, Tennessee has 9 members of the House of Representatives and 2 senators. That gives us 11 electoral votes. I'll talk about that in a minute when I come back on camera. If reapportionment happens, if they say your population has changed, it triggers redistricting, okay? So reapportionment happens and then redistricting will occur, which means the state gains or loses seats in the House of Representatives. They must redraw their districts, okay? And they must redraw all of them. There is not like they can leave a few intact. Actually, they could choose to do that, but they've got to wipe the map and draw to add or subtract a district. When reapportionment happens, it triggers redistricting. When redistricting occurs, we're probably going to see gerrymandering. State legislatures, so the people in Nashville, for us, get to draw the U.S. House of Representatives district lines, okay? And they will draw it in favor of their party, whoever is in the majority or controlling party of the state legislature, okay? There's 2 ways to gerrymander. There's packing and cracking, okay? Packing is they try to get the opposition voters all into a few districts and then leave the majority for the party. that they are in favor of. Cracking means they try to split the districts up into different things. The very funny thing about these last 3 bullet points is gerrymandering may be declared an unconstitutional act by the Supreme Court in June. Not before your test, probably. Not before your test. So all of this may go away, but it is a huge part of this. So reapportionment triggers redistricting, which causes gerrymandering. That's kind of the thing. Reapportionment, redistricting, gerrymandering, all those things. Gerrymandering is bad. Theoretically, these 2 things are good. It gives us more representation and keeps things equal. Let me jump back on camera here. Now, here's why reapportionment matters to something like the president's race. Well, I just did this. Tennessee has 9 members of the House of Representatives and 2 senators. So we get 11 electoral college votes. So imagine if we lose a member of the House of Representatives. We lose a congressional district. All right. Well, let's say we fall to 7. Well, that only gives us 9 electoral college votes. Thus, we are not as important in the electoral college and will get less attention from presidential candidates. So as states lose these electoral college votes, the less likely it is that a presidential candidate is going to pay attention to them. On the flip side, if you gain electoral college votes, it's likely a presidential candidate will pay more attention to your state because they gain more from you all winning. Okay, so with that said, I am 8 minutes away from my expiration time. It actually expires, I think, at an hour. So I'm 52 minutes in, so if you have a quick question, happy to answer it. I'll leave that slide in the PowerPoint for you guys to review at your leisure. Am I there? I'm showing that I'm okay. Can you guys hear me? As always, there will be 25 multiple choice questions and 2 FRQs. Obviously Knox County Schools hasn't decided what they'll do. I suspect we're back tomorrow. I think we can still have the test if it's an hour delay. But I think it gets messy if we get 2 hours. So I will send out a remind when we know what's happening to let you know what exactly is going on in class tomorrow. It may be early in the morning. Spees, if they adjust the time we get into school, I will have to wait for him to send out a new schedule so I can try to figure out how best to execute the test. But in theory, it should be 25 questions with 2 FRQs. Any other questions? I'm coming up on the time limit here. Okay, I'm going to count down. When I get to the end of 10, we'll declare no more questions and we'll be done for the day. Thank you everybody for joining. So countdown, final questions. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I will take it. There are no more questions. As always, Remind 101 is open. My email is open. Send and ask questions at any point. Let's say hi to the Twitter folks out there. I'll take a quick picture to let everybody know how hard you guys work. Okay, all right. Thank you all for joining. I will post the video of this review. If you're like, hey, what did EGERT say? I will post the video of this to each Canvas site by hand. That'll be up probably in the next hour. Fourth block, your Canvas site will finally be completed here momentarily. I'm so sorry. Our automatic sharing system is not really working right now. Okay, thanks everybody. We'll go ahead and shut it down.